can I welcome you? I'm not quite sure what to call this. Is it an igloo or a pavilion or a tent? So anyway, it's a very cosy environment, and it's really great to have you here all today. I actually managed to get a word to the Minister this morning, which was quite nice, and explained about something we're going to talk about in the next presentation, so hopefully you'll hang on to that, the Lugg review. But all he said to me was, "Oh, there's a River Lugg in my constituency." And I was thinking, no, it's about roads, Minister. So there you go. Anyway, my name is Matthew Lugg, as it says there, and I'm delighted to be the CIHT President this year. And in that capacity, I have a presidential theme which I want to share with you. And I suppose it's something that's very close to my heart, which is about delivering services for people. And I just want to give you a bit more explanation about what that actually means in practice. Before I do that, though, I just really want to sort of set the scene for this event. We have a really exciting programme of presentations over the next 2 days. So I do hope that you'll plan that in your diaries around everything else that's going on. And in particular, we are going to talk about a thing called the Lugg Review, very aptly named, in the next session. And if you're interested in the future and funding of local roads, then it'd be great to have you on board, because we really want to hear your views so that we can influence government going forward in terms of trying to tackle that almost insolvable problem, I guess, in some respects. So I work for WSP, and I'm very proud, and they're very supportive of my presidential year, and they have some presents here as well, so go have a look at their stand. But in that capacity, I work in the local roads sector, and my whole career has been in local roads, predominantly in local government. So, I feel very privileged to have worked in that sector, but also recognise that everything we do affects people at the end of the day. So I'm a bit nervous about this clicker. It's gone right. So I just really want to talk a bit about CIHT. If you're not members, then it'd be great if you were, and I'll let you know a bit about some of the things that we do. Go into a bit more detail about this presidential theme, and then talk about how it relates more generally into other things that I've been doing, and the wider sort of work of CIHT in terms of our learned societies. And I also want to touch on an issue which I think is a real concern, which relates to our customers, about some of the issues that have happened more recently that have created some loss of confidence from the public in our industry. So basically that's what I'm going to run through in the next 15 minutes. So any organisation, it's great to be president, but you are part of a team, and you do work within a strategy. And if you are interested to find out more about what we're doing, we do have a 5-year plan, a 5-year strategy. And we have some key themes which are really very relevant. We are a chartered organisation and a learned society and a charity. So it's really important that we're here to make a difference to society. And I think those priorities on that slide really resonate with what we do as an organisation. In terms of who we represent, people tend to think about that highways bit of our institution, but in essence, we're here to represent all sides of the transport sector, and we're very keen to grow our footprint into those other areas. But already, we do have that wider representation, and it's great to have people from all backgrounds. As I said, interestingly, I'm working in the private sector now, but my career's predominantly been in public sector, and our membership does span both those parts of the organisations. And we have a very broad range of membership. So all of you in this room could be members of CIHT in some capacity, whether that's right down from an apprentice level, and I don't want to demean that, apprentices are really important, right up to people in senior positions that could come straight in as a fellow level. So, I think that's really good, because we are a very broad church, and we do welcome people, and particularly people that have come from perhaps not an academic background, but from a more mature, practical experience. So, and these people, are really valuable, not only for CIHT but for the sector. And I'm pleased to say and be proud that our organisation is very strong at the moment. 14,000 members. I think we're almost at an all-time high. But in getting there, we mustn't be complacent, and that's why we need to think about the future and how we continue to grow, but also how we support the current membership. If we're not fit for purpose, then people won't stay with us and won't join us. We have a big geographic footprint in the UK, 12 UK regions, and it's been an absolute pleasure for me to go to those regions and speak at the dinners. They're fabulous events. But we also are represented across the world as well in a number of countries, but we are looking to think about how we grow that footprint as well. And we are supported by over 100 corporate partners. Many of the organisations are here today, so they're very important to us in terms of our interaction and support. Okay. So, as I said, with a career that's focused predominantly in the public sector, everything I've done has been about delivering, in my view, services and infrastructure for people. So it's really important, in my view, that in everything we do, and that involve everybody in this room, I guess, to some degree, that what you're doing ultimately affects a customer, and therefore it's really important that we engage, we communicate, and we listen to those customers and make sure that the infrastructure that we deliver here and now and for the future is appropriate. And as I said before, it links into other aspects of the work we're doing. And this picture shows me standing by the guided busway, which I was in Cambridge, was very proud to play a part in the delivery. And the reason I show that is that that's an incredibly successful piece of infrastructure that's really making a difference to the people in Cambridge and how they travel and commute within that environment. But also, as it says on that slide, I was quite influential when working in DfT in terms of thinking about support and best practice for local highway authorities. And I was the author of a thing called the Self-Assessment Questionnaire. And those of you in local government will be well aware of that, because that has a real bearing on your capital maintenance funding. And when I was asked to write this, it was very much focused around, well, government want good asset management, they want efficiencies, they want good delivery. And I said, well, yeah, but we also need to make sure that everything we do in terms of the work on local roads is appropriate to those customers. So there were 3 questions in that self-assessment questionnaire that I wrote specifically to make sure that local authorities, or encourage local authorities, but probably make sure, because if they didn't score in these questions, they weren't going to get full funding, to make sure they were effectively engaging with the customer. And I positioned it around 3 aspects of that engagement. One was around satisfaction surveys. A number of authorities were not doing satisfaction surveys. In fact, I spoke at one event, and one of the local authority people said, well, why do we need satisfaction surveys, Matthew? We know what our customers are going to say. And I just thought, well, how arrogant. You really need to get that information, because you need to know these things and you need to be able to trend and track that. So I'm pleased to say that 90% of highway authorities now do actually support the NHT survey and do have this regular information. And it's not about the feedback at any one time. It's looking at those trends and how you benchmark and how you can use that information to think about how you improve going forward. And I know it's a challenge in the current economic environment, but these things are based on a Mori poll, so they're an effective sample size of your organisation. And it's interesting, I'm doing a commission for WSP in Jersey at the moment, and I've convinced them that they should join NHT, because then they can benchmark against other UK highway authorities. So another aspect of this, and local highway authorities get lots of feedback from the customer, and it comes through various channels. Most authorities now will have the technology through their, sorry, you've gone too far. Can you go back one? Feedback around the feedback they get. And I think all too often local authorities don't use this information about how they configure service delivery. There's a wealth of information here that the public are telling local authorities, whether it's about drainage, whether it's about road condition, and therefore if you can corral this and use this to influence the way that you deliver service, then you're going to make something that's much more appropriate to those customers. And then finally, information. So about 10 years ago, I'd say local authorities told their customers very little about what they were up to. It was almost like the engineers knowing what they know best. The politicians were very nervous about sharing that information because they were the ones that made the decision. And what we have learned since then, the more transparent and visible you can be, the better engagement you have with that public, and the better the satisfaction ratings are. And I'm not saying it's all about information. You've still got to do a good job on the road, but it's all about the what, the where, the how. And you know yourself when you travel on these road networks how frustrating it can be when you turn up against something that you didn't expect to see purely. And if you'd had that information, you could have reconsidered where you were traveling. And it's not just about the day-to-day, but it's about the policies and strategies, because all too often people don't know why you're digging up this bit of road when they see the other bit of road that's even worse. And what they need to understand is that there is a wider programme, and these things have been thought through, and there may be a good reason why you're not doing that road. It may be about access, it may be about timing, it may be about its priority. And all this information is really important. And I think, the more we get out, I think the better we will be perceived, and the better support we'll have from the customer. So in terms of learning society themes, going back to the institution, you can see that delivering people sits in with those other 5 themes that we currently support in terms of our boards and panels in the work that we do. And I suppose the great thing about customer, it's something that sort of should be in everything we do in some respects. It's something very generalized, but it's really important. So, that's why I've chosen that as my theme. And delivering for people can be looked at in a number of ways in terms of how we move forward in our thinking around the infrastructure and the service we deliver. Thinking about how we shape places in terms of that the environment, recognizing that people got to live in these places, and thinking about how we create things that are going to be appropriate for the customer, and thinking about that inclusivity as well. It's not just about a certain type of person. We have people from all backgrounds, all types of environment, and therefore we've got to have that broader consideration. And we can have a major influence, hopefully, in helping society move forward in a very positive way. Transport is really important as an essential service to get people to hospitals, getting people to work. So everything we do is integral to society, and it's really important that we think about that in the context of the services we deliver. I would like just to touch on this because I think there's been some really catastrophic events in our industry that have not been good for us. And you could say, well, what's Grenfell got to do with highways and transportation? Well, it's an issue that affected the construction industry, and we are part of that. And obviously the collapse of Carillion was absolutely awful in terms of how it affected those customers that were part of those Carillion contracts. And the Genoa Bridge, you say, well, that's in Italy. What's that got to do with us? Well, actually, we have an ageing structures infrastructure. Many of our bridges were built in the 60s and 70s, and it's really important that we have good mechanisms to make sure that we don't have the sort of problems that happened internationally. And I was actually asked to go on radio to respond to the concerns that were coming from Europe in terms of the infrastructure in the UK. So in terms of that public confidence, I don't think we do enough in promoting our industry and all the great things we do. We always seem to be on the back foot where these things happen, and we should do far more in celebrating success. I mean, we've delivered some brilliant infrastructure recently, and we should do more to try and have public recognise that and the benefits they get. But also thinking about us as individuals, and going back to CIHT, one of the things that is integral to being part of our institution is signing up to that code of conduct, making sure that we support those values of ethics and integrity. And I don't know how much the people on Carillion board were really thinking about some of the things they were doing and how that would impact ultimately on the customer. So hopefully, being part of an institution where we have those values will mean that people will challenge those sort of decisions going forward and say, well, actually, this is not acceptable. And even if it affects profit bottom line, at the end of the day, we are delivering these services for people, and we should always recognise that, and this should be part of our core values. Next one. So another part of, I think, which is absolutely brilliant of CIHT is the lead we've taken on inclusion and diversity. Because when I talk about people, and I was saying earlier that we should be inclusive to all people in society, CIHT has taken that lead, and I think we can be proud that we are having a major influence on the sector. The number of organisations that have taken up on this charter is absolutely brilliant. I mean, you look at those credentials; they're all the things that we should be doing as organisations, about thinking about not just from the internal, but not from just from the external, but the internal as well. And this cuts across the challenge around the skills shortage, that making sure that we as an organisation are very inclusive in terms of being open to everybody in society, in terms of encouraging people into our industry. And it is great to see that some of these things are beginning to make a difference, and organisations are recognising the importance of that agenda in helping them in their business, but also recognising it is the right thing to do. So I'm not just going to be looking at this particular initiative, but obviously there are other related things that I'm going to be working on. And obviously, the diversity and inclusion is very much uppermost in my mind and the organisation. And hopefully, you'll be seeing much better gender balance, but much better people from different backgrounds in our organisations, and we're already seeing great improvements in that. But it's always also important about we bring the best people through as well. Also thinking about the training that we offer as well. So if you're not aware of that, it'd be great to be aware of the benefits of being involved in CIHT and what you can learn. So one of the things that we will be doing over the next 6 months is making a continuing professional development a compulsory part of being a member. And you might think, well, that's going to be a lot of work for us, but actually from an employer's perspective and from individually from a learning perspective, it's really helpful that you have that ability and have those conversations with your employer in terms of your appraisals to think about where you want to focus development. The other initiative we've already started, and you may not be aware of it. So I mentioned the corporate partner scheme. We're also looking at a public sector partnership. And I think we are underrepresented from the local authority perspective. So it'd be great to encourage more people from local government, but also work with local government more effectively in encouraging them to join this initiative. So we're talking to organisations like the new subnational transport boards, academic organisations, as well as individual highway authorities. So if you are interested, please come and have a chat at the CIHT stand about getting involved in that. And the other thing I mentioned in terms of where we go for the future is our international footprint. We have members all over the world, but we only have 5 international branches. So there is enormous scope to expand that. But like any organisation, we can only do so much at any one time. And it's really important that we prioritise. We've got a great resource in Britannia Walk, but we've got to use that effectively. And I think the more investment we can get into the institution, I think the more we can help develop a lot of these things that I've been talking about today. So hopefully I've done a good sale for CIHT, but just to reinforce those messages, but also hope some of those things I talked about in terms of delivering better services and infrastructure for people will resonate with some of you in the room, and hopefully it will inspire a bit more thinking about delivering infrastructure that's fit for purpose. Next one. So just to say thank you very much. I hope you found that interesting. I hope you'll be able to stay for the next session, because we're going to roll our sleeves up and start talking about the funding of local roads and governance of local roads, and how CIHT is going to be working to try and influence government going forward. Thank you very much indeed.